Let's get started. So good morning, my name is Dinan Tinholt. I'm from Capgemini and I have the pleasure of being your moderator, animator, entertainer, whatever for this morning. And we have a full session going from right now until lunchtime, 12:30. Lots of activity, lots of debate, and you've got some gadgets around as well, which is all about making you part of the whole process and engaging in everything we do. Before we get started, I introduce Paul Timmers to welcome you. To quote Mary Poppins this morning, or Margaret Thatcher, whichever percentage you wish to use. I think the exits are over there, so in case something happens, just run over there. The other point is, of course, keep your phones on silent, but do keep them on, because there will be some active tweeting here as well, and your involvement for that. We've got two hashtags. Of course, the regular one, which is DA15EU, as well as the one DA15E Society. And if you tweet about this session, please do use DA15E Society, because then we can incorporate that feedback. And we've got our own Twitter meister somewhere over here as well, Marcus Stadler, who's keeping track of everything. That's it for now. So just to get things started, Paul, can I give you the floor to introduce it?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Dinant. I will leave the singing and the dancing to you. First of all, very welcome here in this workshop on e-society. Part of the digital single market. The digital single market is a new beginning, an important step towards that vision that we have of a society that, as the Prime Minister of Latvia said herself, it's not about the DSM, but it's about what it brings in terms of a better life for all of us, for citizens in Europe. The digital society itself, we are all exposed to it, and we see in our daily lives. You were talking about a mobile phone in the pocket and interacting at any moment in time. It's a revolution, but it's a revolution that we have readily accepted. But now it's certainly also something as a revolution that touches the public administrations. And it touches them because citizens have different expectations. Having grown up and using digital technology every day in the normal consumer, normal entertainment environment, they also ask from public administrations that they are as good as the businesses with whom they interact when it is about goods and services, when it is about them being a consumer, and that they are as good to them as citizens as it is in a life that is entertaining online. Perhaps one day public administrations will also be more entertaining online. Now, these expectations need to be translated into real action, and that's the question to you. How do you see that the expectations that citizens have from a digital world translates into what they expect from public administrations, what they expect to have as rights and as legitimate expectations towards governments and administrations? That's part of the discussion for today. It's a very important discussion where there are important expectations. If you go digital by default, we know we can save billions a year in public administrations. We know we can save a lot of time, like for example in Estonia, where they say you save a week a year a citizen by going full digital in the public sector. For us, what you do today here in this workshop is important to develop the next e-government action plan. That is, as you know, part of the digital single market. We are in an engagement process, and we see that as a very open process at this moment in time to get the ideas around what is to be in the e-government action plan, but also because we see that as a more dynamic, evolving action plan, continuously so in the near future. So we count in that sense on your expectations, on your participation, on your involvement during the workshop today and in the near future. I hand back to Dinant for leading the workshop here. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for those introductions, Paul. As Paul was saying, in the digital single market, yes, we expect things from businesses. Yes, we expect things in security and in all of the services that we can get. But as citizens or as businesses, there's lots of things that we have to deal with public administrations. And I emphasize have to, because the good thing about government is that it provides services for us to make life easier and better and safer and such. The downside is it's sort of a monopoly. We have to deal with public administrations. And some public administrations have this slogan, well, we can't make it nicer, but at least let's make it easier. But the question is, are governments really making it easier? Just a bit of a show of hands. If everyone here has probably dealt with online public services sometime or another. If you are really, really, really excited about the service you're getting there, put up your hand. I am impressed with you. So that is good. That means we've got some excellent practices that we can learn from. There's also some hands down. Now, I know that I exaggerate with saying really, really, really excited. By the way, I am going to talk to you about what makes you really excited. But there's things as well that can improve. If you look at national service, things that you do with your local government, whether it's about the experience you have, or whether it's about the time it takes, or whether it's about the ease of use and all those sorts of things, people have expectations, and sometimes they're fulfilled and sometimes there's not. If you go across borders, if you deal with a public administration in another country as a foreigner, then it becomes even more challenging. And how can we make that easier as well? And what can we learn from certain experiences? So those are some of the key challenges we're going to be discussing today. And it's not just about nice talk and everything, but also what are these expectations? What are some of these rights or some of the, I would say, how can we formulate these expectations in something of a charter or something that governments should hopefully abide by or at least aspire to? So the input you're going to give today as well is going to feed into a list of expectations, which will then proceed into maybe something of a citizen charter or a business charter or expectations that we can get, and we'll be prioritizing and voting on them later today as well. So quite participatory and interactive. We have a wide range of panelists today. We have 2, 4, 6, 8 panelists from different perspectives. So whether it's an international perspective or whether it's a user perspective or a multilingual perspective as well. Going to hear from everyone about what they think public services, online public services, should provide to citizens and businesses from these different aspects. Then we'll have a debate between the panelists, see what is most important, but also let's articulate it. Let's make it clear what we're talking about. To get agreement, it's often easy to talk about fluffy terms and high-flying philosophical aspirations. And if there's member state representatives in this room, which I know there are, it's always a useful way to reach consensus, to talk in the abstract and such. And please, gentlemen and women from the member states, you don't need to nod to confirm this. But how can we make it tangible? What practically should be done? And how can we make sure that then that actually is translated into the actual services for citizens and for businesses? So that's the wide range today. 10 minutes for each speaker, 1 slide maximum per speaker, with only one exception, and to get the views from that side. Then I'll try to sort of get the debate going between them, to get some interaction, say, well, what's more important and why are you doing it that way? And then we'll get you involved as well. Your questions via Twitter, then also to get some input from your side, and then we'll get to the whole voting aspect and the prioritization aspect. That's it for this morning. No coffee break. Continue going. And without further ado, we'll go through all of the speakers. And the first one I'd like to invite to give her perspectives is Barbara Ubaldi from the OECD, who's been quite active in the whole e-government field for the past years. And Paul, if I might be so impolite as to ask for your seats, then I can sit on this side.
Well, good morning, everybody. And first of all, I would like to thank the Commission, the Latvian government, for having invited us to be here today. Yeah.
You can see it there as well, Barbara.
Okay, great. I would like to contribute to the discussion today, taking a perspective which is a little bit different. Instead of throwing ideas on what could be the rights to be recognized as part of the e-society, I'd like to focus a little bit on the actions that we expect from governments to enable a context in which these rights can be, first of all, identified, second, recognized, and third, enforced. You will see that I'll make reference to some examples from EU countries that have taken some actions in relation to the points I'll be making. This does not mean to be an exhaustive list. It's just reference to some practices that can be inspirational. First of all, legal basis. If we want to talk about rights, we, I think, need to start looking at our legislations and see to what extent our legislations include already, or might require changes to acknowledge certain rights. In the case of Spain, for instance, a law adopted in 2011 recognizes the right of citizens and businesses to interact with the public sector online. So the first question I think we should ask, which can translate into the right of interacting using technological platforms and maybe online and also mobile platforms, is what kind of legal context we need to have in place in our nations to be able to support the evolution of the rights of users of our services. Second, building blocks, enablers. We often think of them from a technological or technical perspective. We talk a lot about interoperability, for instance. If we look at Estonia, and I'm glad to have Estonia around the table here, Estonia not only looked at developing some key technical pieces that enable the integration of the administration to deliver better services, that enable easier access to services, but for instance, the once-only principle has been considered one of the key enablers that has allowed the government of Estonia to create a context in which the interaction with the public sector is easier. So the point is, can we, for instance, recognize the right of the users of the services, being these citizens or businesses, to provide the information only once to the public administration, which also leads to assessing the relevance of interaction from a different perspective. And the idea would be, I have the right to interact as few times, as little as possible with the administration. Third, data. I think with the ongoing discussion on open data, big data, data-driven public sectors, all of a sudden we realize something that has always been there. The data is at the core of services. It is at the core of a different way of working within the administration, which is about sharing, which is about integration, which is required to deliver services which are better services for the users. So I think we should think about what actions need to be taken within the public sector because of this to become a reality. Is the public sector really there? I mean, are agencies within the public sector at the point of being able to access data they own in real time to deliver better services? But second, do we have a context in which the right of the users to security of data, protection of data, and also transparency on how this data is being used, is it a reality? And I'd like to mention the case of Denmark in this case, where, and we have a Danish representative with us here in the audience today, so maybe he'll be able to share a bit more about that with us, but each citizen has access through its own page on the national portal to the list of data that the administration owns and the use being done with the data. Content and relevance of services. I think we are all familiar with the idea that we all somehow have been quite disappointed with the level of usage of services being provided online. Mainly disappointing have been the numbers of use from citizens. Why? So there's a big question going on around the relevance of the services provided and the content provided to the users. We're thinking about the young generations as we talk about social media, for instance. So I think it's a key point, the fact of thinking about what kind of services we offer to the users. Are they relevant to the users? Are we actually moving to what we define as a user-driven set of services and not only user-centered set of services? And in this sense, I think the UK, through the Digital Government Services, has been done a very thorough work to try to understand what is more efficient for the public sector in terms of online delivery of services and how to deliver services in a more efficient way, but also how can more relevant content be offered to the users. Last, can we talk about a right to engage and to collaborate with the public sector in the new way? Because if the end result of our discussion here is how can we provide services which make the user's life easier and better, then the whole idea is, as we discussed about innovative practices, can we create a way that enables in reality what we talk about, which is a new type of engagement of the public to share what they need, to indicate what they desire, to express the level of satisfaction. And here, I'd like to mention the case of France, where it's not a right yet, but I think the French government has been quite good in thinking in the development of the new open data platform, thinking of it not only as a repository of data, but thinking of it as a platform that enables the collaboration of the various users. So the platform not only enables the upload of data from non-institutional actors, but it also enables the collaboration between representatives of public agencies and businesses or citizens in utilizing this data to deliver services through apps, for instance, which are new services. But it also enables the users to spot data that the public administration is not collecting or producing yet, which are data which are relevant, again, to deliver services which are new services, which are easier and which are better, of a higher quality and more responsive to the needs. So again, can we talk about a right to interact with the public administration, which is not only to access the public administration, but can we bring it a step further? This is easier said than done. In July 2014, the OECD Council adopted the recommendation on digital government strategies, which has the aim to support our member countries, and many of our member countries are also many European Union member countries, to actually identify what should be done by governments to create this context in which new rights of digital services users can be recognized, but more than anything can be enforced. So they can become a reality, not only be a new piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll hold the questions for now and get them later on. Interesting, some of the options immediately have is, relevant content and services. Actually, someone yesterday was mentioning to me, it's less about the relevance, it's more about the understandability of the content and service. But that gets to a different point. Next speaker, Tavi from Estonia, and you're going to specifically address this. First of all, you're extremely enthusiastic about the public service, so that's curious to hear what makes that experience so exciting for you, and specifically also from the Estonian experience, the once-only principle and how that has helped you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Greetings from Estonia. Yes, I should talk about once-only principle, but why I'm so excited about e-services in Estonia is that it actually works in our country. So in private sector and public sector, and then if you can see the results, I mean the thing that, for example, our citizens are like saving at least a week every year.
You mean it works as opposed to working in other countries?
Yeah. But and what kind of things you can actually build on top of that? I mean, our e-residency program at the moment, where we actually try to get, more citizens outside from Estonia to be part of Estonia. I mean, all this is starting to happen because we have all these services digitalized. But talking about once-only principle, I mean, just let's take one example: declaring taxes. I mean, if you declare taxes, it's to declare your taxes. I mean, what do you need? You need information from banks. I mean, all your transactions, what you have done with shares, how much money you actually earn from share sales. You need your salary information, how much salary you earned last year, what kind of benefits you got. Where you spend your money, to have can you actually get some discounts or benefits. And this information actually comes from different ministries, from different institutions. So it's normal. I mean, for example, if you want to get, if you want to declare taxes with just one simple click, that information needs to arrive to your declaration from different institutions. So we have a goal that, for example, declaring taxes in Estonia should take less than 5 minutes, or just a couple of clicks. And to do that, we started to connect all those institutions. So already 15, 16 years ago, we developed a technology called X-Road that actually allows secure digital or secure data and transaction between institutions. We developed the technology, and we started to contact or connect all different registers. In the beginning on government side, and afterwards also on the private side. And I think the first services we got were fantastic. I mean, people love them. I mean, like if you can declare your taxes, for example, just with just a couple of clicks, I mean, like it's a fantastic service. So before that, it was like you spent a day on actually managing with all the paperwork. But after that, it was just 5 clicks. And for example, next year, we would like to end up with a situation where there won't be any click at all. So you just, I mean, like the tax and custom will transfer money to your account, or actually takes money from your account if you are okay with that. So because we have discovered that 95% of declarations are not changed by the people. So the information flows in, 95% don't change anything. So, and I mean, like if you have something like that, it's obvious that you would like all the services work this way. With tax and custom, it's easy. They after money, so I mean, like they are motivated to develop their services and then actually produce the good stuff. But how you actually motivate, for example, Minister of Social Affairs, or Minister of Defense, or Minister of Economy? I mean, like to develop their services in a way that they actually try to like create the best service available on the market. I mean, like, and it was hard. Even though we had the technology, still every minister wanted to collect their own information. So if, for example, Minister of Finance had information about me, Minister of Economy actually asked that same information from me again, because it was more, like for them it was more convenient to ask from the citizen once again this information that actually the government already had. So to motivate the transaction between those institutions, we created once only like principle or policy. So if I can get the next slide, please. I'm the only one who has 2 slides. So you can see extreme growth in 2009. This actually represents transactions between government institutions, how many transactions there is. And as you see, and it's millions of requests. So you see a tremendous growth in 2009. And that's the reason that in 2007 we accepted the law or principle that information can be asked from the citizen or from the companies only once. So if any of government institution already has that information, you can't ask citizen again, you have to take that information from that particular institution. And the point was that the citizen actually became the advocates of the system. I mean, like, for example, if Minister of Social Affairs asked them some kind of information, they answered, sorry, it's not my problem, it's your problem because the Minister of Finance already has that information and it's your problem how to get that information from them. So people started to motivate government institutions to actually start sharing the data and then start transferring the data. So, and then it ended up in the growth in 2009. I mean, like 2007 it was a law, 2008 was development of and changing the system, and 2009 was the effect. And you can see the effect on the slide. So how the principle actually works, everybody in Estonia knows that if they know that specific information is already in the hands of the government or in the private sector, they just show, I mean, like if anybody has that information, they just say that please take it from there or from here. I mean, like it's not their problem anymore. And why it's so important, why it should be important in Europe, I mean, like if you think about it in this way, for example, if it's a Latvian company wants to start business in Germany. If they move to Germany and start their new business, they start from scratch. Even though they might be a perfect company here in Latvia, having a perfect financial record here for 20 years, I mean, like all the loans paid in time, everything. In Germany, blank zero. You're nothing. Your credit history, nothing, zero. I mean, like, and then to actually start proving that you're actually like a normal businessman, you need to print out all those bank statements and then carry these statements with you to Germany and start proving, yes, you can give me a loan in Germany also because I'm actually a good businessman or entrepreneur. So instead of running with papers, it should be normal that if I allow this German bank to access my data here in Latvia, it should be available and doable. And then to promote that, I mean, like to even actually increase the data exchange and the digital single market from data point of view in Europe, what we should do is basically like two rules. Every information that is collected inside Europe on paper should be always, I should be able to enter that information also in machine-readable way. And from every institution where I actually get the paper, if I want, I should get this information in machine-readable way. And those kind of rules could help us to do the similar graph, what you see on the screen at the moment, on European level. And actually would be a great, how to say, basic component or basic principle for digital single market in Europe. So just one practical example. But yes, in real action, what it means is that data is, how to say, it's shared, it's inactively used, data quality gets better, everything gets smoother, and the person just can enjoy the results of his society instead of running and hassling around with papers. So just one example from Estonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Tavi. So he used two slides. I thought the first one was a bit complex. It had many things and many colors. So it was very colorful, but it does make it complex in terms of trying to understand it. But I like simplicity a lot. So a single picture is nice. You made some statements there. Government does not have the right to ask for something twice. So that's actually nice. Don't turn it into a principle. This is just a question to think about. Into a principle, we should only ask for it once. Turn it into an obligation. You got it somewhere, never ask for it again. And I don't care whether you're an agency, a regional government, a national government, whether you're federal, not federal, forget it. If the government somewhere has it, never ask for it again. Another interesting principle or statement, no digital, no deal. If you're going to ask me something, you have to be able to ask it for me digitally, and if not, then I don't have to fill it in. I'm trying to exaggerate what you're saying here, but those could be interesting principles to think about. Now the perspective of multilingualism. This thing is a bit odd. Multilingualism. So Gudrun Magnusdottir from S-Team is going to talk about that, and what is the importance of that, and how does that translate into better services for citizens and businesses? Gudrun?
Well, good morning, and thank you for bringing me back to Riga for the third time in about a month. I love the place, so no complaints. I would like to talk about two sides of a coin, the problem and the solution. Actually, a few years ago, I was in an ambulance rushing through a city in a country where I didn't speak the language to a hospital where I didn't understand any communication. They found a doctor that could speak a little bit of English. She told me that I had faced a lot of blood loss and I was due for surgery in a few hours. But before then, they had to give me blood, at least a liter. And then she left. And I was with the nurses, not able to understand anything they were saying, and they were not able to understand me. No blood came, and I realized I was in danger. Now, here I was in a hospital bed, an international expert on cross-border interoperability and multilinguality. What was I to do? Well, I reached for my mobile, and I went for Google Translate. And I typed in, I need blood, ping the nurse. She came to my bed, and she started giggling and laughing. And I said, okay, there's not something wrong with that translation. Then I think of the EU resources, the massive terminological resources of the EU, Eurobook, a fantastic resource. And I went in there and I typed in blood, and what did it give me? Blood transfusion in all of the EU languages. I just, okay. I pinged the nurse again. She came, she took a look at it, looked at me seriously and ran away. Within 2 minutes I had my drop. And luckily I'm here still. But I would like to tell you all that do not speak Latvian. Please be careful crossing the street. And those that speak Latvian also be safe and careful crossing the street. But in a foreign country, you have no aid. Even with all of the work and the effort that has come into e-health, there is no multilingual solutions to support you. Today, I believe this could be done with a simple tablet communicating between the patient and the doctor. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the solution. So this was the problem. The solution, well, I also represent the biggest multilingual interoperability effort in Europe, actually probably globally. Today, due to the effort of a European agency and in the intellectual property area, 44 countries are interoperable, over 30 languages. Today, you can actually, as a Latvian, go on a website and register your trademark in Latvian and send it to China in Chinese. This is what I call multilingual interoperability, and I would like to see that in all e-health services and all e-services for governments in general. I would like to see a right of the European citizen that in any e-government function, they are able to speak their own language, as long as it's an official EU language, in any situation where they find themselves in danger in the EU. So that is basically my short statement on multilinguality. It has always been considered to be an expensive thing, but it is actually not anymore. Technology has caught up with us. And in the truth of all aspects, the ROI is, or the return of investment is fantastic. The cross-border interoperability effort of IP actually stands in front of a scenario of 4.7 trillion in turnover annually in Europe, massive jobs in other countries through trademark and patent registrations. And this solution has cut 6 months off the time that it takes to register a trademark in Europe. It is now done in 10 weeks. The US takes 2 years. Now, if you think of time to market, how many billions is this saving annually in Europe? Thank you.
Thank you. Just one tiny question. What was Google's version of I Need Blood that made them giggle?
I actually don't know, but it was something having to do with her. I understood that it reflected on something she was supposed to do, not something about me. And I really still don't know what it meant. I tried to sort of understand it later, but it was referring to the person that I was talking to, not to me.
Okay. So in other words, at least one message: don't trust Google if you're in a life-threatening situation and you need something translated. Although I have personally also seen things where you go to another public services, online public service in a different country, use Google Translate for that. And sometimes you get understandable things, sometimes you get funny things. So it can make the whole experience more enlightening, although probably not more effective. So that's one side. Now, taking the perspective of a actual tangible situation, and something a cross-border service, namely for the services directive, the points of single contact. I'd like to introduce Ben Butters from Eurochambre, who will actually tell us what is it like in real life and how good is it.
Thanks a lot, Dino. Gudrun's story reminded me of a German I met on holiday a few weeks ago in Italy who was vegetarian, and she was going into restaurants and she thought she was telling them, I don't eat meat. She checked it on Google Translate, but it transpired a couple of days later she was telling them, I don't eat dog. So then she understood why she was getting all these strange faces from the waiters when she revealed this information. As Dinon said, I'm going to talk about the Services Directive, and in particular one key element of it, which is the points of single contact. We've been talking a lot about geo-blocking this morning. I want to talk about admin blocking and how we can reduce administrative blockages in the European single market, which are, I think, felt particularly acutely in the digital markets, digital context, because it's almost by definition digital is borderless in many ways, but there are still nonetheless many borders that they encounter. And I want to talk about not just digital by default, but cross-border by default. I'm guessing that a lot of you have heard of the Services Directive. It's a hugely significant piece of internal market legislation. Sorry if I get a bit policy geekish here, and Dinan, interrupt me if it becomes too fluffy for your taste, but I need to just explain a bit of the context. It was a very important piece of legislation about 10 or 15 years ago, which was supposed to remove barriers that block service providers from trading between member states within the EU. It started off as a proposal by the Commission based on the country of origin principle, which meant that the service provider should be able, if he or she is licensed to provide a service in their own member state, to be able also to provide that service in all other member states without encountering any additional requirements. That was radically changed by the European Parliament and the Council during the negotiations. Fears about social dumping, about lower standards, became a prominent factor. So it switched to a principle of country of destination more, whereby the service provider was supposed to comply with the rules in the member state where he or she would provide the services, but the member states were obliged at the same time to try and reduce to the bare minimum the requirements and the processes that the service provider should go through in order to be able to operate in that country. And one of the key elements that they were supposed to bring in to help reduce the services to a bare minimum and to facilitate access to their national market for service providers was to introduce something called a point of single contact. This is pretty radical because in a sense it was really the first horizontal legal obligation to provide e-government services, and that they should be accessible not only to domestic service providers but also to foreign service providers from across the EU. It was supposed to provide one interlocutor where the service provider, the business, could get all of the information he or she needed and, crucially, complete all of the procedures still required. As I said, these procedures were supposed to be cut to a minimum, but they were supposed to be achievable, doable, completable via this point of single contact online. So it's information and its procedures all online and all available to service providers from across the EU. It didn't start particularly well, so after a couple of years, the Commission decided to bring in something called a Points of Single Contact Charter, which identified 4 key elements of key criteria for these points of single contact. And I'll very briefly list those, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the state of play is. So every point of single contact is supposed to have quality and availability of information. It's supposed to, every transaction is supposed to be achievable through e-procedures. It's supposed to be fully accessible to cross-border users, and it's supposed to be user-friendly. It's supposed to be easy to use by these service providers. So last year, Eurochambers, along with Dinan's company Capgemini, won a contract from the Commission to evaluate the points of single contact. So about this time last year, Dinan and I were deep in negotiations on the tender process, and we won the tender in the early autumn, and have been working on this for the last 6 months or so, and have just completed this evaluation. It's based on a mystery shopper approach. We identified mystery shoppers, business people, or people from chambers of commerce in all countries involved in the PSC. So that's not just the EU, but also Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. And they tested the PSCs through real scenarios, various different scenarios, and they tested those 4 criteria that I mentioned. The results were disappointing, and the slide kind of shows the difference between what you try to design and how users actually end up using the service on offer. A lot of companies still simply don't use the points of single contact, and they take a different route to get to the service market. So there's a significant disparity there between what is expected and what is needed by businesses and what is actually being delivered by national administrations in terms of these points of single contact. I'm not going to name and shame yet. The final results of this assessment aren't public yet. They probably will be in about a week's time. But as I said, the results are in some countries are good. Most countries they're mediocre, and in a couple of countries they're very poor. So this really is the focus of my proposal for a digital right. We think that there should be a digital right that all businesses can complete online all procedures to provide a service or sell a good domestically or in another member state. At the moment that is simply not the case. In many countries, Estonia is one of the good guys in this scenario, but there are many that aren't. So that's our proposal for a digital right. And it was fantastic to hear that Estonia has taken the only once principle a step further, and even for tax declarations, it seems to be the not even once principle now, which is great from a user, from a business perspective. So we'd hope that these points of single contact would really become a catalyst for streamlined, user-friendly e-government. But unfortunately, in a lot of cases, they're still more a reflection of the inadequacies and deficiencies of e-government, and that's really got to change. So that's what our proposal for a digital right revolves around. Thank you, Dinon.
Thank you, Ben. Interesting approach there is, in assessing these services, you take a mystery shopping approach, which is a nice way of really testing, is what we've done the right thing? Because sometimes you design a service as a public service, but the problem is you know much about the service and you're a government official. So your mindset is already skewed because you understand the language and such. If you take a mystery shopping approach from the actual end user, some things might be there, they might not be there. If a user can't find it or can't use it, it's not good, irrespective of whether it is or it's not, because that's the end customer. So I think that's an interesting approach to actually assess the services. Another question interesting to think about, Ben, is there is a charter, there's actually a directive, and apparently the performance is poor. So what can we actually do to get organizations, to get public administrations to abide by such a charter? That's from the perspective of the service directive. Now we're going to another domain, which is e-health. And Anna Kallio from the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health in Finland will give a perspective on that.
Okay, thank you. Nice to be here. So when I'm talking about e-health, so I'm talking about healthcare and healthcare information, which is highly sensible information, and there the key word is trust. And there we go to transparency, reliability, certain rules. So first I'm going to talk about what we have been doing in Finland now, what we have done with these issues. And then later on I'll be telling you about what we are planning to do. So first of all, this secure health data, how to achieve that. In Finland we have a national approach to that. So we are collecting health information from different healthcare providers into one national repository, which is technically dealt with our national insurance company Kela. So it's a national place. The data is stored in Finland. It's not going outside of our borders. We have very strict security auditing for the systems that are putting in information or taking out information, including also the organizations that are joining this national repository. We call it Kanta. And we have these rules. So we have legislation since 2007 concerning about the principles of use of this data. So mainly it's used only for treatment of patients, and some authorities can use it also. Now we are changing this legislation or adding on so that we are putting on rules of how to use this data for example, research, because it's structured rather good value data, so it's very valuable for research. The other thing is transparency. So then we are talking about the citizens' access and control of data. So our citizens can take a look at the health data which is stored concerning them in this National Kanta repository. They can also check the log data, so they know which organizations have been using their data. And then if they are suspicious about that, they get more information. Who is the actual person using that? Was it in the right purpose? Our people can also control the use of data so that they can kind of open this archive so that this data can be used by all the healthcare professionals taking care of them. And they can also close parts of the data if there is some appointment or something they don't want to kind of spread around. So that's their right to do that. There are also different kind of consents. They can make their living will there. There will be consent for biobanks, consent for research, and so on. So this will be going further on. We have quite a lot of local e-services within healthcare. For example, appointments, risk tests, things like that. But it's not equally in the whole country. So in some regions there are a lot of them. For example, private sector is very good at that, but in some regions they don't have any. So that's not very well organized. Now we had elections this spring, and we have a new government, and they have the new program. One of the interesting things there is that they are putting e-services into priority. So they are telling to our authorities that our people have right to e-services. We are a big country if we are talking about the area. But a small country, if we are talking about the amount of people, only 5.4 million people, which means that in the northern and eastern part of Finland, there aren't so many people living there, which means that there can't be a healthcare center or a hospital with every village. This means that in order to get equal service, we have to have e-services for our people. And besides, we have been asking Finnish, and they prefer to e-services instead of going inside to a healthcare center or to a hospital if it only is possible. So then we have this e-health strategy. I have a few samples here, and it's also published on web in English. And there we are concerning about the security of mHealth data. You know mHealth, mobile health, different kind of apps, different kind of devices sending measurements to different sources. And very many of these are, for example, American-based. You can't control what is done with the data. You don't know what is happening with that. But we see that there are enormous possibilities within mHealth. So that's why we want to deal with that, but we want to do it in a secure way. So that's why we are planning to have a national repository for this information coming from apps and devices, and also from our citizens themselves, so that they can access it, our citizens, they can use the data, different apps can use the data, but it is stored nationally. And this data is also available for professionals taking care of our people if the citizen wants that. And we are also, when I was referring that these e-services are not equally delivered in Finland, so we are planning to have a national platform for these e-services so that we can help our healthcare providers to have them. And then, as we all have this freedom of choice to choose our healthcare provider, in order to do that, we really need information about the quality, accessibility of the healthcare services, and this is something we are planning to do. One last thing, many people are very suspicious when I'm talking about healthcare and e-services that old people can't use them. This is not the way. 27% of people over 75 years are using internet regularly basis. So they are there, and the young ones are getting older year by year. So soon it's 100. Thank you.
And then take the regular mic. A couple of interesting observations there. I mean, of course, yes, trust and service are important and such, but everyone's going to probably say that about every service. But you also go to the extreme in terms of transparency, not only where you see your own data, but who's access to your data, and you can go further with that. That'd be kind of interesting to see for all public services, and to see who's actually peeking into what I have and such. Of course, there's the talk about the right to e-services, but also to get information about the quality, in this case, of health services. But if you could do the same thing for every public service, to get information about the quality of public services, now probably many of you are going to be saying, well, we don't measure quality of public services, you just get it or don't get it, and you deal with it. Actually, if you start measuring the quality and providing information about that, speed and accuracy, that'd be kind of interesting as well. And also useful comment about how we always talk about inclusion and the seniors and such, but quite honestly, apparently in some countries, even the senior citizens are good at using it. So that's from the perspective of the healthcare. So we've seen the business side, we've seen the healthcare side, but now from a purely political perspective, Mia Petra Kumpula-Natri, member of the European Parliament, talking about the fundamental digital rights for citizens, and what can we expect from that side?
Oh, hello. Yes, trilogues are now processing in data privacy and other things, so I will not go into the legislation phase. We are now, everyone who is interesting to follow, but to raise some questions. And the most important for me is why we need the e-government, and why to ask for it. And as European Parliament stands for the Europeans, I think the simple answer is that we want to improve our life, and we want to improve the European citizen space as well as all the citizens of the member states. So for me, the e-governance is not to make papers to be digital, but it's to improve the processes. And I see that all those companies who are successful on the business, they provide services, they provide something that we want, and not to make something that they have been doing earlier on the paper format to translate it to the digital format. And there is so much to do. Just have to comment the previous healthcare system digitalization, that I am very worried now that I've moved several times and now working in Brussels and taking my children from Finland to Brussels, and so that when was it last time I had my vaccination that should be improved in 10 years time? I don't even know where my papers of the vaccinations are. Are they in Vaasa, in my home city, Helsinki, where I used to work 11 years in the parliament, or did I pack them up to be in Brussels? And so it's a question of the security that a person should know. And then when the health systems are discussing which is other, there is a room for the improvements. And I'm really curious on, even on health sector, which is more secure for the data protection, what we want to other silos of the society knowing from each other that ask once only. So then it comes to my health and my health record and all that. So there are a lot of aspects that we need to think, but then the room is there for improvements. I already answered that no comments on my tax the data in Finland, that was simple and enough, not even 5 minutes, and I'm very happy on that one. So that's why I raised my hand in the very beginning. So can the public sector and e-governments do more that what we want, or is it slowly enough to make the old-fashioned ways to be digitalized? So I think there are a lot of, it's limitless that we should think new, that what the government is doing is to provide services, and on what purpose. If it's to get snow out of the tree, do we need the public sector to concentrate on what kind of cars, who will do the job, and whatever? Or can it be that we have to have a snow away from the trees that the traffic can flow? So this is the whole way of thinking, and I think we should be able to do that one too. So the fundamental right is for me to inclusiveness of the e-society. So every time I have to think as a representative of the European people that what does it mean, inclusive e-society? Or are we entering the era that yes, there is good e-governance, citizenship is in the e-format, digitalized, there is a digital identification for people, so is everyone there or is there going to be left outs? So I think no one could be left outside of that one. And then it really raises a question that has been not solved in the European level or not in all the member states at least, is that is it a fundamental right to exist in the digital world? Is it a fundamental right to exist in the digitalized e-society? And yes, some countries have the ID for everyone, but do they have it for non-citizens? In Finland, the banking system was so broad that it was very difficult to have the government offered ID, electronic ID, and then not everyone was able to open a bank account. So then you were not able to book a meeting with the job assistant because then you did it in the internet. And then as you don't have a job, you don't have the bank account because you don't have a good income and you're not a good client. So I think once more, when we go these high-speed regulations on the European level and on the national level, we should still go back to this difficult question that should there be identification for everyone? I remember signing the questions and what should we do for the developing world that not register all the children born, especially if they are girls, so girls without papers. Are we entering the era that we will have Europeans without ID, electronic ID? So there has been talks on this when the Charter of Digital Rights was spoken in EU, but it's still not clearly said that yes, that is one thing we should do. And I think that's the one the parliamentarians should raise up really, to have it for everyone. Not to talk about citizenship, because citizenship is then what you have to do and what you are right to do, but at least UN Charter of Fundamental Rights makes everybody right to exist, and very fundamental on that sense. But then more after this very most important thing, I think that at the moment that we talk about a lot of the consumer rights as a consumer in the business, but also have to speak as a citizen and as a existing somebody in the whole principle. We have a European Charter of Fundamental Rights attached to the general agreement what creates the EU. So then there are some rights that we should still as politicians and lawmakers balance all the time and respect. And I just had examples, right? For example, the right for the privacy, also the right for the location privacy. But then at the same time we have our own rules, for example on VAT, the new rules that the seller has to pay the VAT according the location of the customer. And you have to prove it where the location of the customer is. At the same time, we require the freedom of the location when you're traveling and doing the thing. So this is just an example that, yes, there are fundamental rights that are collapsing, and we have to make a good balance respecting the fundamental rights. But my conclusion is that I haven't seen cases that we should forget the fundamental rights agreed in UN or the European Charter of the Fundamental Rights. It's just a requirement for the new era that we will give these principal rights to be in place to enable more innovations for the private side and for the e-government side. So when I took the VAT example, what I heard from the small businesses is also that they are happy that now the authorities are working much more together, the taxation authorities, they have to work cross-border and have to work much together. So I hope also the other parts of the silos in the ministries and authorities will work much more together when it comes to the consumer protection and for example, data protection, when the national implementation authorities have to work a lot together. So it might be that DSM, the Digital Single Markets, is also the kick-off for much more results that we were thinking when we only talk about the consumers and markets, that it will be the real life that considers citizens and human beings in the markets. And I see the similarity that when European Union was created, it was, yes, the common markets and common goods circulating, and then it came the political phase. And now we are seeing the same happening in the digital one, that so much more is happening, that is happening cross-border. So just, I always start and end my own thinking what is happening in the digitalization. Is it that 4 billion people are connected now, 7 is soon? How much can we regulate and keep them inside the borders? So then having the good environment where people can trust some basic principles, some fundamental rights. So that's the role of the politicians to try to guarantee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we already know that from the parliamentary perspective, at least from your perspective, the DSM is the kickoff of much more. So we're going to see a big change and lots of initiatives in numerous fields. Interesting to hear what additional things we can expect the coming years. Talked about the fundamental rights, inclusiveness. Interesting question for later on. Is inclusiveness, is it a barrier or an enabler in the digital world? Are we using it to speed up or to slow down? You don't need to address it now. We'll talk about it later, but you can start thinking about it. And also, are we more strict with inclusion in the online world than we are in the offline world? And when you talk about the right to exist, also I'm thinking about a bit the Estonian examples, but also other examples. Does that also mean that I have the right to only exist online? In other words, pretend I am not there offline, do everything with me online, and for the rest I don't exist for you. That's a different question. So while we've been talking about these policy perspectives and different perspectives, I have sitting next to me Uldis Leiters from Infogram, US as well as Latvia based, and he seems to be sitting there thinking about all these stories, and he's just thinking, I just need to get back to business, I need to do business, and just let me do my business and don't hassle me too much. So what's your perspective from fundamental digital rights for a business?
Thank you. So I have two parts of my story. I had two parts of my story, and the first part is Infogram being super global in terms of traveling around and meeting people, and we chose Riga as a headquarters location because Riga is an amazing place. It's located both geographically, the time zones, and actually have a pretty good airport. So the connections there is just working for us very well. And our second office in San Francisco, which is probably the most far away location you may find from Riga, which is almost like 10 or something hours away. It almost perfectly doesn't overlap the daytime here in San Francisco. So I had this experience as an entrepreneur to travel around mostly Europe, parts of Asia, Middle East, America, over the last 3 or 4 years, and encounter certain things that I expect from this kind of European Union as, the single market, the single like freedom of movement, freedom of everything, how that actually works in real life. And I had some horror stories there, like a recent experience. A few examples. So I was doing a panel discussion in London a few weeks ago, and I had to be online, and I had to tell my customers. We had this thing called webinar, and I had to do a video chat with the customers of my company the same day. So I had to do that in London, and I booked a hotel which was slightly more expensive than I went to, right next to the Oxford Circus, and I called the hotel a few days before I arrived and say, hey, I need to do a very important video call. There's going to be a lot of people watching me, and I really, really need the video stream to work. can I rely on your internet connection? It's like, yeah, you can rely on your internet connection. It will cost you additional £30 a day. I'm like, okay. I can take the £30 a day, but I really need the internet connection. The thing was, when I arrived in the hotel, internet was so slow, it really barely loaded YouTube. I couldn't really do that. I had to search around London to find a place where I can do a video call. And this example actually is one of those fundamental things that doesn't really work. I had another experience of sitting in a lobby of a conference in Berlin, having a very well-known American entrepreneur sitting next to me, just like on the floor, and was like very desperate guy, saying that, do you know any hotel in Berlin which I could like regardless of the price, where I can use Skype because of the internet connection is too slow there. So sometimes, and very often, the entrepreneurs traveling around Europe, they take resort in using the data roaming. The average cost is like 200-300 euros a month for mobile roaming. So the Latvian mobile phone, I think, sells 30 megabytes, which is something you usually burn in 10 minutes, for about 5 euros. That's really nice. It's really, really nice. So traveling around Europe is extremely expensive for that kind of thing. Right, it does do a lot of good stuff probably for a mobile operator business, I don't know really, but the entrepreneurs traveling around, especially the startup entrepreneurs who don't really have that much of the money and probably willingness to support industries such big as mobile operators or internet providers, has this kind of an issue. So that's kind of one example. Another example is sometimes, I hope more and more European entrepreneurs are going to do business outside Europe, and a lot of countries outside Europe do require visas. And then there's this kind of thing of the passport, so the identity. So theoretically, I know that the country knows that I'm existing, and the country, I assume the country has all the characteristics to describe me. I don't know, I had fingerprints when I got a passport or something. So they should be like somehow identifying me, not because of me having this piece of paper. I know that Finland has the ability to have like 3 passports, and Latvia only have 1. And I've pretty often had this issue that my passport is in a consulate in some random country, in let's say Stockholm or somewhere else, and I can't really travel because the only way I can travel is within the EU, because I have the ID card which only works in European Economical Zone. If I have to travel outside, sometimes my passport is booked for 2 weeks, sometimes 3. So that's another kind of a thing. So theoretically, it's just a piece of paper, but it actually, if I have to be in a country which requires a visa, which is a stamp which I have to send abroad, which is country whatever, and another country, let's assume it's the United States. I can't go to the United States, which is a pretty important partner of the European Union, without a passport. So I'm pretty much locked within the borders of EU. So these kind of few kind of very practical examples as an entrepreneur which I encountered as the issues. Another one, probably I just checked, and probably I'm wrong with the data, but I think probably a third or less of EU countries has digital election rights, like actually implemented in a way that you can actually go and vote. And I remember I was just that doesn't really tell you that much of an entrepreneurial side, but does tell you about like when we count the votes at the end of the day, and it's like so many Europeans doesn't really vote. Why? Because the society is so lazy, don't care about politics and everything. I really care. So I went to the last 2 times I tried to vote. So was once I didn't actually vote because of like there's specific voting office I have to go to in Riga to actually cast my vote, and it just happened to be a very different side of the city. I was like really unable to cross there because like another case when I really tried to was trying to vote abroad, and that was like, yeah, you have to apply for voting like 2 or 3 weeks ago or something. You can't really just go in there and vote. I have my digital ID card. You can scan it and you can probably prove myself. I don't know, you press some kind of button there and check my identity or something and put some record at the end of the day. No, how it works is they have a piece of paper, they have a ruler, and they stripe out my name, and I have to sign at the end there. And that's actually true, not just for Latvia, it's probably true for like 2/3 of EU countries, right? Like the different levels of Stone Age in those basic things that we do, which I really didn't expect to have. Like I just went to cast my vote, and it's like, this is not your district, this is not your voting office. Okay, that's nice. It's a nice sunny day, and I already spent 3 hours doing that. So I should probably take a cab. I should probably go to like absolutely different part of Riga. And it was a nice day. A lot of Latvians were just like, I don't know, in different parts of the country, probably enjoying seaside or something. Why can't I vote from my mobile phone if I can log in as like e-bank or something else? So these kind of things. This is the first part of my story, which is more like horror side. There's a part of my story of Infogram. So Infogram is a company that does infographics and charts for online publishing. We've been around for about 4 years. We employ 40 people, most of them here in Latvia. We have another office in San Francisco, as mentioned. We help people publish data online in a very easy and simple way. Our main customers are online media, agencies, governments. And then when we looked at the numbers of our users, so we probably publish around 150,000 infographics every month. So according to our best knowledge, we're probably the largest publisher of infographics worldwide. And we looked at the things people actually do in our system, what they do with data there. We realized that most of those infographics doesn't really make much sense. And we had this notion a long time ago, like several years ago, and I mean, it's probably true for most of digital services that offer some kind of thing to do online, like creation services. Let's say Twitter, like most of tweets, are really not really useful. But we saw that we have some sort of a responsibility for clustering internet with a lot of useless information, and we started this advocacy program from our side to promote the thing we call data literacy. And data literacy is actually a pretty broad thing. So in basic terms, it means ability to read and write data. And that means you know how the data is structured, you know how to use data. But then on the broader side, it means responsibility of how you use data, how you read data. So if you, let's say, if you consume media, I can promise you, you will encounter manipulated information like this week, guaranteed. If you just like, if you read more than 20 articles or 10 articles, you probably will figure out something that, if you really go beyond the things that actually is presented there, there's something that probably unconsciously, one-sided, but the information is misrepresented there. The same is true for governments, the same is true for education, is that people say that, well, like the way data literacy works, the two sides of data literacy, there is emotions, like stories, and there are data. So the story side works that the one who tells the most emotional, touching story wins. And the most touching and emotional story sometimes might be absolutely nothing to do with the interests of the majority, the interests of like probably like the emotional stories they're exaggerating. So when you take that into the kind of communications with, let's say, media, when you read news, you get one-sided information. When you encounter the same with governments, you have one-sided information. And the data literacy is, as a citizen, you have the rights to ask for the underlying data. Can you tell me where you got this information from? Sort of using the information responsibly. If you are presenting something, actually showing these kind of things. And I think this kind of educational side also is really key to many base elements of democracy. So that's the other thing I'm doing. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Interesting to hear you talk about, let's say, dealing with other countries that you sometimes feel locked in the borders of the EU. Although if we hear the story of Ben Butters about the points of single contact, sometimes you might even be locked within the borders of your own country or own region and such. digital election rights and the right to ask for underlying data. Where did you get it from? Actually, that's an interesting one, because sometimes people say this is the results and this is based on this data, and you get high-level data. You ask for the micro data, then it becomes challenging. So the question is, how far can we go with that? Because then if we go micro data, then we get the privacy issue as well coming up. So which is often a good reason to not talk about it. So that's it from your perspective. The final presentation is from Martin Fußleitner from High Performance Austria, talking about the user-friendly public services. And what's be interesting here is, what is user-friendly? Because that's a fluffy word, and I'm quite sure you're going to make it very practical.
Bad news, it's a fluffy word, yeah. Another bad news, it's still a long way for lunch. Good news, they are already cooking and working on that. And in that way, I would like to, it's very simple and very banal we are now talking about, but someone told me that all the digital services we could compare a little bit with the cooking process. Food. First of all, we need food. Without materials, we can't cook. Without the better materials, it doesn't taste that good. So, of course, the first step is the data we are looking for really available? First thing. I think that's quite simple, that's quite clear. If there's nothing, we can't do anything. But just the existence is absolutely not enough. Second, cooking. It's the organization of data. Are the materials we have really already in a shape that we can use it properly? One simple example of that is this list we got here at the plenary. We haven't been sure, is the sequence like this? Or is the sequence like that? This organization simply doesn't tell. So in the sense of cooking, it's all the things we know about Gestaltgesetze, psychology, all the things which really helps us to orientate, to navigate, and a lot of other things to have a clear picture, to use the data in a proper way. Finally, I think it was the Swedish minister, a lady, some years ago, she said it has to be cool to pay tax. Absolutely right. It has to be cool to eat. So third step in our using digital data in public services is really the pleasure of eating. Perhaps even the pleasure of paying my tax, because it's not a nightmare, but it's easy to go, and a pleasure and a respect to my person. Also in the other sense is, eating alone is not too bad. Eating together is much, much more fun, joy and pleasure. So finally, in the fourth step, when we have eaten, when we have had our digital data, our service, is it so exhausting and not digestible that we are simply sleep down and not ready to do anything else? Or was it really food, nutrition to do the next step? So the question is, what is the impact and what is the benefit? In all these four steps, we could sit alone in our living room, or we are always in an interaction with the public service. It is about what kind of food we might have. It is about the cooking, co-creating, participative design. It could be, of course, the eating process. And finally, of course, we have to know what was the impact, what was the benefit, was it useful, and did we really move ahead? So finally, as there's one definition of design, that design is nothing else than organization, Francesco Franchi. Online is just a means to make it smoother, easier, nicer, quicker. But I think it's not a dogma. When it is beneficial, we will use it. If not, not. Everybody decides in any second, in any situation, for herself or himself. If there is one claim for a fundamental right, then I must say, all this digital thing, it does not replace the personal contact, the personal assistance. It's about multilinguality, yes. please make me feel understood. It's about the single contact. Yes, only once. There's one responsible, there's one care about me. And of course, it's about the progress, it's about the history, it's about the sympathy assistance. So wherever I am and whenever I go, it's a good feeling to be in some good hands. And perhaps this also might be a fundamental right that yes, the digital service is a means of organization, but in any case of emergency, there's someone caring about me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we've now heard everyone and heard different perspectives. Final one, let's say the all public services online as a cooking process. I still need to imagine that, although maybe it's still the breakfast that's processing or ready for, or being ready for lunch. It does make me wonder if I just don't like a meal, can I send it back to the chef and ask for something else? Because I can't do that with public services, although it would be nice to do that. And the final thing is online is just a means and not a dogma, and we need to decide for ourselves. So now to get a bit of the debate started, and let's start with that last point, because it ties into several comments that were made. Online is just a means, we can decide for ourselves. We talk about sometimes digital by default. Now, I see you here waking up and you know the default word, but you know what does default mean? Mia Petra, I heard you talking about, you know, the right to exist. Do I have the right to exist only online? So can we make it bolder? And could we then say, I have a right to exist only online. If I only want online services, I should expect it. So digital as a right and online as a right to exist as opposed to offline. Could we go even so far as to state that, Mia Petra?
I think we have been talking about the existing and being online when it comes to the services and elderly and children, and we do have the cases that with children you don't have the services because they don't have the full adult ID. And that's the case. And then I'm very curious about the elderly issues. A colleague of mine in the parliament said that, don't protect me, I'm 73. And some of you might guess who she is, Marju Lauristin from Estonia, who has the idea and has all the possibilities and uses. And I know the studies made in Finland that over 80 years of people, age of people group in Finland, 75% were eagerly willing to learn more on IT if they had the opportunity. So it is about the inclusiveness that we have to give the opportunity. But then as the only existing in their internet, if the question was if you only exist as a digital, I do it every time when I have to log in some internet places to put in my name and address and email or whatever. I never put my real identification there, so I'm existing in many airports with only my quasi data they are asking.
Okay, but let's take it, I mean, online, let's talk about public services. Yeah. If I say, I, as a citizen, in all my interactions, only want to do that online. Not digital by default, digital, only digital, if I choose. Of course, if somebody who's 85 doesn't want to do that, or a child, fine. Would you support to say digital, only digital as a right in Europe?
I would say that most cases very much yes, but then it comes to something that's very close to my heart is the digital education. I really do want that the children have a contact with the real people, real teachers, and not only machines, because they need to grow as a persons. In the social security is not only money appearing in your account, but most of the time that's good to do and concentrate on the human being, on the human touch. So yes, we still need hands to take care of the people, but then not to take care of the putting your names and crosses on the paper. There we can automatize a lot, and then yes, you can exist as a person. I heard a Finnish banker who was saying that they will soon make all the loan decisions by machines for the small companies, as they have the account information, they have the history, so why you have the face-to-face contacts? That's you can use for the more difficult cases than the very basic routines that you are doing. So in many places you have routines, you don't need face-to-face contacts, but the digital decision is very, very, very good and enough. Yeah. So on the elderly care, I take one example what was very, very good. at the moment there goes, if let's put it my way, my mother is 90 years. This is not a true case, but could be 90 years. There's a house service going home to her to give her medicines, food, taking her to shower, and then the lady normally who's doing it is reporting for the his boss or her boss. But then that's it. Now there is a case in my home city, Vaasa, that there is a easy QR readable, everybody can read it by a smartphone. And then I can see that, yes, there was a lady this morning, half an hour, but she didn't want to have time to take the shower. But I can follow everything that happened to my mother. And my mother, she doesn't remember who was here yesterday, so she can check it. And then also the boss can see that where she was working and how she was doing. So actually, it's not only that it's putting the machinery in, but it's helping us, also the others, to see how has the treatment been. And that's not the case in the normal cases, but what was the technological innovation? Everything is there already, but what was the innovation was the whole process, that everyone can see, the patient herself, the relatives, the other.
And that gets into the point where we talked about insight into all the data and such. Before going to Tavi, what you might see in the background, because that's the point we're going to collect from people here as well as from everyone you in the audience. We've been writing down the sort of the rights or the expectations that have been voiced so far, which we'll later try to vote on in terms of what are the top ones. And you already see things, digital service by default, which we started talking about. You know, what does default mean? Maybe it's a right. Cross-border by default, transparency, user-friendliness. So that's just for you to know, and everything you say will be added to this list, so we can prioritize them later on. But Tavi, still, I mean, I didn't get a right answer. I mean, I heard a story, but I didn't make it clear. Can we then say, would you support we have to force all governments must provide every single service they would ever provide online if I want to use it? Would you say yes to that?
Now it's interesting answer from Estonia. No. And I mean, like, we are the government who actually has all the services online. And we are actually facing like new types of problems. So, for example, I mean, like the Latvian guy talked about e-voting. I mean, like you assume that if you have e-voting, and we have it from 2005, so last 10 years, you assume that participation in voting is actually increase. It doesn't. But it doesn't decrease anymore, so it keeps the same level. You expect that if everything is online, people love to use e-services. They don't. And there's a simple reason. I don't know if you remember when you last changed your phone. I mean, from Nokia to Apple, or like from Apple to Android. If you remember the experience, you hate the new thing at least a week or 2 weeks. But you use them every day. For calling, for SMS, for data. I mean, like, use it every day. It's not the same thing with government services. Statistics show that the like normal person uses government services 2.6 times every year. 2.6 times. And one of these 2.6 is declaring taxes. So it's 1.6 times every year. And now let's talk about user experience. I mean, like, how many houses you build during your life? 1, maybe 2. So can we talk about user experience in the field of acquiring a construction permit? Oh yeah, 5 years ago I built, I still remember how to do that. You don't. And that's the point. You don't have an experience to use government services, even if it's like the simplest in the world. And for example, what we have, like, there is a government portal with 800 services. Try to find, like, we have done at least 4 or 5 times reorganizing all the services and make more and more convenient for a person to find the right one.
Okay, but now you're going to a new speech.
No.
What you want to, so how do you select what you do and why you should or should not provide everything online?
My point is that people actually want to have like as a person, as a call center to call, or like some kind of extra, I would say, support. It's not. It can't be only e-services. I mean, like, yes, for geeks it might work, but I'm like, master of engineering, so in software engineering. So it might work for those kinds of people, but like most of them, they rather call and then do something on online, like combined, not just do everything on online.
Yeah.
So that's a real life.
So Barbara, Tavi, and he's not going to answer this, is the question for you. Earlier was talking about, the whole once-only principle, and government should only ask for it once. But that's still a principle, and especially civil servants, they always have good reasons to, deviate from that principle. Could we introduce something such as not a principle, but sort of a prohibition? You are not allowed to ask for anything if a government in your country has it somewhere. A prohibition against twice or more.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit what I was saying, at the beginning of my intervention. Can we talk about obligations for the public sector in the same way? Can you talk about prohibition for the civil servants to ask for something that they have already? I think it's an interesting perspective. It is an interesting perspective because
that's not an answer. Would you say yes or would you say no?
Yes.
Okay. You would say you are not allowed to ask for it more than once. Okay.
Yeah.
And Ben, if you look at it from the perspective of the Service Directive, across borders, so you're not allowed to ask for it more than once in a country. Could we extrapolate that to cross borders? That would actually force countries to work together, in this case for business startup.
Yes.
Tavi's getting excited there, but...
Sure. From a business perspective, that would be the ideal scenario. But we're a long way from that. We've still got some countries where you can't even comply with certain requirements online at all, and there are a plethora of requirements. We've heard, for example, from the Polish point of single contact, well, we can't put this requirement online because traditionally in Poland, if you're a service provider in this sector, you come with a piece of paper and you have to get it stamped, and that's the way they like it. Which is a pretty lame reason. It might be the case, but if you're a service provider from Portugal wanting to enter the Polish market, you've got to get on a plane with your piece of paper to get it stamped. And then you might have to come back a few weeks later to get another piece of paper stamped once that one has been processed. So only once is a pipe dream in many member states. So pan-European only once, as I said, would be fantastic, but we're some way from reaching it.
Yeah. Okay. Continuing with you, Ben. You talked about, with the PSC charter, 4 aspects: quality and availability of information, e-procedures, fully accessible cross-border, and easy to use, user-friendly. Can you explain to Martin next to you what user-friendly is, without getting into the whole thing about cooking, because I didn't get that part.
I don't have the definition from the charter in front of me, but
as a user,
from my perspective, user-friendly means you can find what you need quickly and you can do what you need quickly.
Mm-hmm. But then quickly in a pan-European context, well, that's a wide concept.
Sure. A lot of these pan-European contexts remain a pipe dream, unfortunately. But
Gudrun, I mean, you're going to say user-friendly is at least I can understand it in different languages. Maybe pass it over. I can understand in different languages, but how would you further elaborate on that?
Well,
does that mean all of these member state representatives provide every single service that they have, whether it's national, local, or whatever, in every European language?
Technically viable. Very simple. It is actually based on a lot of work, quite a few software components, and the big work is actually in what we call multilingual knowledge structures. The multilingual knowledge structures, they act like skeletons keeping information together. So when I found blood transfusion inside Eurovoc, I started exploring Eurovoc further, and actually the European Union is sitting on a gold mine of resources that could be put to use cross-border. So yes, viable. Let's do it.
Aldous, do you think she's right? You started laughing a little bit, so I was just wondering, do you think it's viable? Do you support it, or do you think, well, I'm skeptical about it?
I would still remain skeptical because I think there's a lot of if we could unify all the things the European Union does, like on a country level, let's say all the things in Latvia would be identical to all the things in UK and all the things in Germany, and then we unify that into a multilingual system. That'll be sort of easy. other thing that keeps me skeptical was that the EU just recently introduced this nice thing of dealing with VAT according to each of the countries. For tech company, it means 1 week of work for 2 people to actually dig through all the documentation, realize how it works, and actually implement it. It's okay. Sometimes we can do that, but if there's going to be more and more of these kind of things that we have to implement, we require to implement something that's pretty complex. That's rather as something that stops things from happening. And I'm just afraid that that some of the, let's say, the local administration of rather tiny city council and some of the countryside would just probably try not to use any services at all, instead of like trying to translate that and like keep it happening in all the languages. They might be afraid of that, I think.
Do you think it ain't gonna happen?
I would be happy to see that happening. As a citizen, I would be very happy to see that happening. As a consumer of these kind of things, but as the other side, as someone who might be probably either lacking some services because the provider would be reluctant to actually go there, or as a business would be forced to probably implement really complex things that might be something. It makes me skeptical because of like how doable it is. Not all things that you base on, let's say, Google can do that, and not everyone has the same capacity. So sometimes it's very complex.
Okay. Talking about data, and you were talking about the health example. You know, you see all your health data, you see all your log data as well. Who's been using it? Do you think we should translate that into a fundamental right to see every single piece of data and every single piece of log data about your data for any government service? Would you say yes to that?
No, I wouldn't. We have had recently an issue concerning police information. Whether all the people should be able to check the information which they have in records for police officers, and the answer is no, because there is a good chance to misuse that information too.
What about just for transactional services? So this is more, let's say, privileged information, which is about security and such. Health is very private data, but it's not privileged, it's about yourself. Transactional services, how about that? Would you say yes to being able to see everything there?
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Okay, Tavi?
Actually, it's very important here to understand that if you want to build a trust between the government and the society, it's important that the society always believes that they always can check, like, if their data has been approached or changed or everything, including police. I mean, like, I'm not talking about actually seeing what the police has about you, but the thing that the police has accessed your data, that should be available for the people. I mean, like, that's the only way how you actually build trust between the government and the society.
Okay, now I'm going to start walking around because we've been having the discussion here so far, but now to involve you. And that can be either questions to some of these panelists, or it can be contributions to some of these ideas that we can later vote on in terms of what rights or expectations could citizens or businesses have. And I was thinking yesterday about I don't know who was in the afternoon session, the story from Rona, the girl who started up the hearing repair company. And last night at the Railway Museum, was having drinks and having a chat with her. Introduced her to some commercial officials as well, who she then tried to encourage into making things understandable, because she said many times, yes, probably the service is available and probably the information is available. First of all, I can't find it, and if I do find it, I can't understand it, and even if I do understand and apply for certain things, then there's always, let's say, complexity in rules which just make it uncertain in terms of what can I get. So we talk about digital by default, we talk about open, transparent and everything. But she says, no, make it understandable for me as well. So then you could also sort of have understandable by default. That's a nice one to include in the Danish strategy. I'm not sure whether you do that. So comments or questions, contributions from anyone, and I'll just walk over to you and I'll take another mic. And please introduce yourself as well.
Yes, of course. I'm Valeria Ronzitti from CEP. We represent public services providers and employers. And I have a comment more than a question. What annoyed me all over the panel is that I see a very strong confusion between public services and public administration. So here we are speaking about public administration, and it's not just a question of wording. As you can imagine, representing all public services providers, for me there is a great distinction of what you can expect in terms of digitalization from healthcare providers in the real sense, meaning hospital and also social care, or education providers, or energy, water, all the kind of utilities, and public administration. So I really plead that in the conclusion of the panel and the way ahead, what you are looking forward, you really make this distinction, because here you are just trying to understand what public administration can do to better serve citizens. And that's the point. Otherwise, you open a different box, the Pandora box of public services. Then I can provide you a lot of examples of how, for instance, water providers are trying to make things more transparent for citizens.
No, man, let's think of it from now we're confusing it sometimes, public administration, public service and everything, but we're still looking at it from our perspective. We got politicians, we got CIOs here, we got stakeholders. Let's think of it from the user perspective. They don't care about that distinction.
No, it's not true. It's not true. You are talking about two different things, because one thing is the business who is trying to facilitate his life and wanting to have permits and things easily done, and one thing is the old person going to the hospital really wanting to have a service from a human being providing the service, and digital then is just another mean to facilitate the life of the citizens, of the customer. Is a distinction, and also is a distinction because, of course, okay, you are taking this perspective of the citizens, but we are here in a context where then the institution, I think, will want to do something with it. So from the institutional point of view, those who have to setting up the frame, the political frame, this distinction is completely important, is extremely important, I think. So there are two different stories, there are two different things. I mean, public administration is part of public services, but is not the whole public services.
Okay, thank you. Tavi, you have a chance to disagree. Or Ben?
Well, there's clearly a distinction technically, but a bit like Dino, I don't really see that it's a particularly relevant one. And if you want to pay your water bills online, you should be able to. And you said that it's already happening, so I don't know. It doesn't strike me as hugely significant. And I think that the whole package, the digital by default, could apply to both public services and public administration equally. Clearly there are different ways of going about it, but nonetheless it's important that as a service provider to the general public that it is as accessible and therefore as digital as possible. And of course the old person going to the hospital won't necessarily be digitally skilled, but nonetheless that should be an option open to the majority who are.
Short comment from you, Petra, and then we'll go to other people in the audience.
This applies to the public services and administration, as in business in general, that it's easy to digitalize the supporting businesses or supporting services, but where you really make an effort is that when you digitalize the core, the service. And that's the challenge in the public side, that we tend to put the papers digitalized, making the administrative work digitalized. But when we really reach something is that we rethink the process, what we are aiming to. At the moment, the time of the doctors is not used properly. I think the same fact is not only in Finland, that they use big amount of their working time on reporting and not taking care of the old person or the young person.
Okay, thank you. Frank.
Yeah, thank you. Frank Lehmann from FedEx in Belgium. I'm a bit surprised when I listen to the whole debate, because I think you guys are a bit daydreaming. And sorry, those who know me know I'm sometimes a bit provocative, but it's for the sake of the discussion. I very much liked the comment that Tavi made, which was exactly putting the finger on the wound, which is, it's not because you digitalize that you solve a problem. People don't use it more. We forget that what we build, we do that to make the life of our citizens and our industry more efficient and better. We need to solve a problem. That's our goal. It's not by making it digital that you solve the problem. And I would like to add one of the figures that struck me this morning at the opening. Don't forget that in Europe, only 40% of the Europeans don't have any ICT skills. So if you guys want to go fully digital now, you really kill the link between government and citizen. So please think about it and refocus on the main goal, which is solving a problem. And maybe if you do it with a mobile phone, it might become easier to do. Then I agree. But let's first solve a problem.
So if you would translate that into a proposal for a right or a lack of right, what would that mean? Would you then say, digital by default, forget it. It's digital by public service administration choice based on what we think is important for you, and that's it.
It's a wrong discussion, as I said. It's not digital nor not digital. It is solving a problem.
Mm-hmm. But what if that problem has been created by public administration? I say it's created because the public administration creates requirements. I'm thinking about the service directive. Governments has obligations. I'm a business guy. I mean, you've got Infogram that wants to do business and that starts up a business, but there are requirements. Government creates a problem, at least creates requirements. So you need to do those. Then you want to do them online, but that's not possible. Is the problem then the obligation or the fact that you can't do it online?
Well, if the conclusion is it's a problem, then get rid of it. Yeah, abolish it. We've had a state secretary in Belgium for administrative simplification, and most of the jobs he did was get rid of old laws, old rules that were useless.
Could we then, I like the comments, could we then say deregulate before you digitize? We've got one person saying yes, of course. So.
Yes, of course. Peter Butt from Germany. Because it's not about digitization. Digitization by itself is not the solution. When I have an office just across the street, then it's not easier for me to be on the computer solving my administrative tasks online. It's easier to cross the street and to have a scheduled talk with someone from the administration. So if that would be possible, and I would pay for it as a taxpayer, I would prefer this very much. So it's a problem to think that digitization by itself will solve any problems of the society. This is not the case. We should be thankful that we are entering a digital age where many things that we would never have deemed possible some years ago are now possible. But do not make the mistake and taking digital for the brave new world. That's not the case.
So, because you represent you're from the German government?
Yeah, Ministry of the Interior.
Exactly. So when you digitize something new, before you digitize something, do you always, I would say, reassess and deregulate it where possible?
Yes, of course. We have identified when we were in the process of designing, I would call that our e-government law, we identified 6,000 legal duties to give your signature in person, and we estimate that approximately 50 or 60% of them is virtually useless. So we are helping the citizens very much by going into detail now in all the legal regulations that we have and trying to get rid of what is unnecessary. Yep. This is the first step. If I would try to digitize all 6,000 requirements to give your signature, sorry, that wouldn't be feasible. And I think that the discussion threatened to go in exactly this direction.
Okay. Thank you. Comment, if you could pass the microphone back there. And then we've got two in the back, and then comments from up front.
Thank you. Katarina Debrisis, I'm representative of Norwegian government. not member, but still we are on the internal market. To comment on the last, I think we need to digitize, but maybe the focus on what is to be digitized is wrong. What we need to digitize is back office. Really thoroughly digitize the back office so we actually can give joined up services to the citizens. Because if you look at the citizen, and especially the ones that are now coming up, the younger generation, they usually think, don't bother me, just deliver the service, whatever that is, send me an SMS that it is done and that's okay with me. And to be able to do this, you need to digitize back office and you need to digitize the communication between administrations so that actually you can have the once only or whatever that is as a principle working. Without that, it's just something you say. So the services should be designed as a process in a way, and the regulations, of course, is a moment there, as a way of solving a problem for me. I need to solve a problem. I don't need to fill in an online form. That's not really of interest. I want to solve a problem.
Forget digital by default, it's automatic by default.
Yeah. Basically, it should be like that. And I also agree with the speaker over there that we have a distinction between administrative services and service provision in itself. That gives some other issues. And personal contact is much more important aspect there. But there's one point I also wanted to make, and that is this assumption of users wanting to collaborate. It's always repeated everywhere, and it's really interesting to hear where do we have the data to support this claim that all the users of digital services from the government want to collaborate to make them. Which areas is this really important? And maybe in zoning, but what other areas people are sitting there and saying, this evening I want to collaborate with the government and make a good service instead of going to the movies. So that could be interesting to hear a comment about. Thank you.
The only example I know of that one is Rona last night, who was actually offering to improve it where possible. So thank you. Then I think comments in the back here. We have two.
Thank you. Carsten Kestermann from Software AG Germany. And very interesting debate. And one thing I think is what we should keep in mind is that what we discuss are no contradictions. It's no contrast sometimes. You know, when you say get rid of bureaucracy and legislation doesn't mean that the rest that will be there you should digitize. And when you digitize it, you have to think about how you do it and do it from the end to the end process, because when you only digitize it and you digitize it wrong, it might be easier to have it analog instead of having a digitized complex process. So digitization is not the answer. That is true, not always the answer. But in Europe, we are in a state where we are not able to digitize processes from the end to the end. For example, in Germany, we are not able to do our tax online. We have to print it out and sign it and send it to our tax office.
You serious?
Yes.
No, we need to talk. No, sorry. No, sorry, please
well,
continue.
that is true. Of course it is.
But anyway, the interesting thing is this is a user perspective, apparently.
Yes.
This is your perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, of course, totally right. Only digitizing in a bad way doesn't solve any problem. But when you are able to do it right, it is maybe better instead of not doing anything. And it doesn't get rid of making bad legislation.
Okay, thank you. Reinhard?
Reinhard Post from Austria. I fully would subscribe ideas like having the right for receiving electronic documents and having the right to turn in electronic documents as originals. When it comes to principles, I'm a little bit timid in that situation because that might go wrong directions. Let me give you one example, which we actually had when there was this European benchmarks on e-government. In Austria, you would not find an office or an electronic portal where you can register a car, because we just don't do car registration. We just told the assurance companies, you do all the business with car registration and you turn in to us the tax which comes from that. And this is a very interesting example. It would not fit any of your requirements, you know, principal, digital, online, multilingual, what have you. It's not there. It will always be a zero. I think you have to go more into the matter than into the principle. And we have to find things like really having a right for citizens and for businesses to have electronic documents, to receive and to turn in electronic documents. That would be a huge step, and we are far from that.
Okay, but maybe just to clarify this from two questions. Right now you're making two comments. One is the topic about what you do or do not need to do. When we talk about public services, and you know, service, the word service sounds positive, but in many cases it's an obligation. You need to register something, you need to fill a form and such. And in that case, it sounds like if you can do it, if you can avoid an obligation, simply because it's not there.
Make it differently, not avoid. You know, if you make it implicitly, because you have to insure your car anyway, why should you have a second act which goes totally to a different direction, which goes to administration? Why to do that? And we have several other examples going that way. So we have to, when we optimize government, it's not only putting such principles. Therefore, I'm a little concerned about your, you know, let's put that principle there.
Okay, but then you talk about principles, and then on the other hand, you mentioned, for example, the right to be able to submit electronic original documents and everything. If you have certain things, would you prefer principles or rights? Because a right is something, I have a right, this is an original, and the principle would be, we strive to have the acceptance of electronic documents, and that basically leaves it up for everyone to do what they want.
When we get European, I would prefer to have a certain basic number of rights, which are really there everywhere. And then when we can agree on, you know, other directions, but that's going beyond. But a certain number of things should be rights, like having receiving electronic documents. And that's why I'm saying when we are going digital, we have to see that in many ways, even in my country, the right to receive an electronic document as an original is far from being implemented.
Okay, thank you. I think, sorry, here there was someone who put up their hand, a lady, I think, but now I've missed it. Did you? Yes. And you. And then I think this part of the room, so.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not forgetting you.
I'm Madeleine Sjostenthir from the Swedish Innovation Agency. I know this is difficult. I've been funding projects in Sweden and even being funded by the European Commission to talk about these issues. But when you talk about government, you should also, it's not a national government or only. In member states you have national, regional and local levels. So therefore to engage people is an issue, and I've been piloting funding projects in Sweden, in north of Sweden, where we have taken the processes from France, how to design processes to involve citizens. And it's possible if you really plan it and implement the process on a regular basis, and you can get fantastic new innovative public e-services. So it's possible, and therefore also the usage of public e-services can be higher if you try to get the engagement of the citizens and the enterprises who also use public e-services. Thank you.
What is the key to engage them?
It's that they see that their work can be better, also the back office maybe, and they can see that they have the citizens are the citizens go together with the people handling these services and developing these services. So they are sitting together in groups, and therefore they get a connection and they get to know each other. So it's easier then to, if someone has an idea, to know where to forward this idea. And also to get politicians involved is also interesting. So if you see it gets better in my life or for my company or for me as a civil servant, that's an idea.
Thank you. Another question, comment here.
Hello, good morning. My name is Gun Tanch, and I'm a member of European Economic and Social Committee and Vice President of European Disability Forum. And I'm just going to go back to your question about opportunities, no, about rights and principles. And I'd like to say a bit more. I'd like to say about rights and opportunities. And when we are talking about web and about society, it's quite important to talk also about inclusion. And our panelists didn't talk a lot about it. So I'd like just to say that in Europe we have 80 million people with disabilities, and quite many of them are not able to access internet. Just not able because the internet web pages are not accessible. And accessible, I mean accessible for blind people, so prepared in a special way. And accessible, I mean also accessible for elderly people. For example, if you make a light gray screen with a white letters on it, how many people are able to read it? And how many people know the best way how to make it accessible for everybody? And I'm really happy we have here a member of European Parliament, because I know that European Parliament is talking a lot about the new directive on accessible web pages, and I'm really sure that quite soon, maybe, European Union will have some kind of standards on accessibility. But before we have a directives and regulations, it's going to be quite important to remember about it, just in case you would like to have a much more clients on our web pages than we have now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I'll briefly get some comments from you, Petra, because basically, how soon are you going to get a regulation or a directive out there to make this happen?
Yes, I know that it's a strong debate all the time that we have to be inclusive, and that's the basic idea. And I'm really happy that also the e-government takes it into place, and it's a principle that we should not only let it to the markets, but really require. Because I really see that when it covers everybody, like in Estonia, when it covers everybody, you can provide better service. If it covers only the working class, or the 20, 60 years old, then you cannot plan more on that. So, but can I give a comment for the Swedish and Norwegians who were talking about how to get citizens involved? I think there are billions of citizens who give a response, but this is stupid what the authorities are asking. And how many of the authorities respond to that single citizens commenting on their service? There were many authorities from the different countries that once you get the response from the citizen that I was not happy with the case. My husband had a phone call from the tax authority last week that she contacted the week before, that because the ready-made tax formula was missing one social insurance number of one person who was working in our summer cabinet to make a reparation. So one missing number. And they were asking us that they were not able to edit everything because there was missing one social security number. And my husband said that, why you didn't check the other papers and other parts where it was that we paid the salaries that we couldn't pay it before without that number. And then the IT department from the tax authority called back, thanked my husband for the good idea, and they changed the progress. I've lived now a year in Belgium. I haven't had any idea. I have had several ideas, but not single phone calls that, yes, thank you for the response, that something we want to change in our processes. So that's one way. We, all the citizens, we are giving response and getting angry and getting frustrated. So it's also the attitude, both sides, attitude of the citizens to taking part. But no, not only that, now please fill in the forms that evaluate how this is, but on everyday basis, when there's a response, I think it's a good way to then try to improve.
Actually, like a nice new principle, reactive public services. And Frank is taking note. He's not writing it down, but he's got the idea to take back to Belgium for that. We have, I think, one more question here, and then over there.
Hello, I'm Michael, Graz University of Technology, Austria, and well, in first instance, I want to agree with a lot of comments so far, which I personally would summarize saying the E in the E-society does not bring us forward only. So there are cool things, we can digitalize this and that, but it takes much more creativity. What I really appreciated was the case of Infogram, saying we have a very cool software, you can access it online, you can make your infographics using Infogram, but the problem is, and this leads me to a point I'm painfully missing in this discussion and in this panel, is e-learning, learning, education. So it's not about having a cool tool that allows us to make, to visualize data or to visualize this or that or a process. It's more about empowering people, teaching people, educating people in how to use data, how to understand data, how to read data. So I think what we really have to include in this discussion is education and maybe also the right to be educated in a digital age, educated for digital requirements, so the 21st century skills. And I think this is one thing we should take up in this catalog of rights, of obligations, of future activities, to be or to have access to digital education, to education for the new age.
Yeah, so do you mean the right to, because the right to education we have, so is it the right to have education about digital things or the right to be digitally educated?
About digital things, yeah. I would extend the right to education to the new age, to new requirements, to new demands of a society in order to bring us as a society forward in terms of an e-society. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the reason the panel's quite quiet now, because I'm doing the participatory thing, getting everyone here involved. So you were first.
Okay, I will try to be brief because I have 3 points to make. One is related to the last intervention.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Gabriel Rizola from Telecenter Europe. So the first one is well, thinking on fundamental rights, if we should not consider digital literacy as a fundamental right. Literacy as such is considered a fundamental right by UNESCO and a foundation for lifelong learning. And I'm wondering if digital literacy should be not part of that, or it will be in the coming future, I think. I'm happy to hear that some of the participants are trying to expand the horizons of this session, because reducing e-society to a discussion about public services, to me, it's a poor approach. We should include, for example, debates about e-democracy, e-participation, which we are not talking at all here. And my third point is about if we go to public services, there were so much progress in the, let's say, in the government side, but to what extent citizens were involved in those processes, in the co-creation of those processes, or those services. So these are my 3 points, which are, well, I think each one of them merits a separate debate, but I would like to see them reflected in that picture we put with all the principles to...
They're sitting in the corner typing it up there, so we'll see it on later on as well. Okay, thank you. And you?
I wanted to return to the multilingual question raised by Gudrun during her presentation, and also pursued it by the other panelists. The right to speak your own language, the digital right of multilingualism. I work at a language technology company called Tilde, based right here in Riga, and we recently faced and helped solve this challenge for the Latvian public sector, the Latvian eGov portal. We built and designed a machine translation service that was integrated into the Latvian e-services portal, so that Latvian residents, visitors, and also citizens could use public services in different languages, because as Gudrun pointed out, not everyone speaks Latvian. So thanks to this tool, people can access the services, access the public services in multiple languages, in their own language as well. And my question is as follows. If we combine these different language tools, if we combine, for instance, machine translation systems that were the best for each language pair, if we made available, for instance, a high-quality Icelandic to Finnish automated translation system, if we combine, for instance, text-to-speech tools which help people who aren't able to see, to read the internet through text-to-speech, if we combine tools like search tools that help people search for goods and services in different languages and also see the results returned, if we combine tools like automated speech recognition for multiple languages so that you can talk to your device not only in English, but also in Finnish or in Icelandic or in Latvian. If we combine all these language technology tools in a single cloud platform or infrastructure and made them readily available across Europe to businesses, to citizens, to governments, my question is, would this benefit you? Would this benefit your business? Would this benefit your public institution? And how would this help you reach your goals? And how would this help you reach more citizens and solve the multilingual challenge in your own work? How would this cloud infrastructure, this cloud platform of language solutions help you? That's an open question.
Brief to the panel then, before going to the next one. Anyone want to reflect on that? Gudrun, surprise.
Yes, and as I'm sure you're fully aware, next week there will be a start announcement of such a European language cloud. It is not just about machine translation though, and I want to go back to what Uldis just mentioned. It is not just about translation, and that is actually a very important point, because the example mentioned by Austria about registering cars, that they didn't do that. That's wrong, you do, but you just do it differently. And this is exactly happening all over the EU, and this is the reason why I'm always talking about a multilingual knowledge system. Because what we did together with OHIM in Alicante for most of the world was to create a multilingual knowledge system where we agree to disagree across the borders of the EU and in every country. But whatever we do it differently, and it belongs to a different concept. And this type of knowledge structure is able to portray each and every country of the EU. And for me, this is a cornerstone for what I call cross-border semantic interoperability. Must be multilingual, but must allow countries to differ. And my aim, and in the last conference I was attending and speaking, I was actually talking about enabling the European Union to exist with its variations, with its multilingual variation as well as its structural variation through such an infrastructure. And the basis already exists in some of the resources of the EU.
Okay, thank you. And comment over here, a question.
Thank you very much. Robin Walker from UK Government Digital Service. Thank you to the panel for some very interesting thoughts. My question, I guess we've heard a lot about the what, but I have a little question about the how. So obviously, Taavi, in Estonia, you had exactly the right conditions to go away and to build up a system, and you showed us the picture with Crossroads, and it looks like a very sensible system and a system that works well. Do we have the right climate in the EU to get from all of these good ideas and to actually start to put some of them in practice? You're talking about it being useful to do a lot of this stuff at a European level, but do the structures exist to actually turn it into a reality?
Okay, Taavi, interesting to hear your perspective on that, because just to provoke you a little bit, I also heard from one of your countrymen that you could also take the position that the whole Estonian e-government approach was just one lucky hackathon, which you then put into a structure and made formal.
Actually, it was like a couple of good engineers who figured out that. But answering question, yeah, I mean, like giving back to Europe actually has time to, I mean, like to rethink and rethink and rethink. I mean, like we are losing our competitive advantages. I mean, like US is leading, Asia is going like even faster. I mean, like, yes, we can stay here and wait and then decide and discutera and do all that stuff, or let's just do it. I mean, like, in the Estonian way, we call it innovation through pain. It means that if you look at the current situation, there is no other chance. I mean, like, and then if you understand that there is no other chance, then you just do it. And you know it's painful, and then people know it's painful, but you explain that to the people, and they, I mean, like, they accept that in the end. So I think we should. I mean, we don't have time. Europe doesn't have time.
Well, you don't have time, but some countries take plenty of time.
True.
And you just mash up together a room full of people and something comes out.
During the last 16 years, every year.
One comment from this side.
Hello, Lucia Klashnicova from the European Commission. I wanted to elaborate on the previous question as well. If you could give us more insight into how to make this happen, what are your lessons learned, how other countries could approach this Estonian project if it was to be transposed to other member states. What are the challenges? What are the enablers? Because we all know what should be done, but apparently technology is there, but politically it's not happening. And another question on Europe being here and discussing things. Why do you think this is not advancing faster on a cross-border basis? If possibly this kind of e-government projects could not be in favor of some of the member states who might see it as loss to their competitive advantage if the success stories were shared too fast.
Okay, quick reaction with Tavi and then the cross-border part,
Very quick
Ben.
answer, like, I'm a software engineer, so the key problem is engineering principles. I mean, like, the Anglo-Saxon understanding of privacy and data protection doesn't allow Europe to develop it, and that's it. That's it, and that's answered. I mean, like, we can't put systems to talk with each other if we treat the privacy and data protection in a way as it's treated in Western Europe. And it's an engineering question. And to solve that engineering question, we need a political decision. So the thing, for example, that UK doesn't want to number people, and that's it. They're out already. It's an engineering thing. No, the principle is that to do those engineering solutions, you need some key things to be in place and need to be agreed all around Europe. And that's it. If you can't have that, from engineering point of view, we can't solve the problem.
And Ben, on the cross-border element?
There are many reasons. Some political. There's frankly speaking an element of protectionism to the absence of improvement in relation to the services directive in particular. There's also what we call in English the not invented here syndrome, in that people think that what they have developed is the best solution always, and they're unwilling to contemplate that somebody might have a better solution, and that is clearly a barrier to having a pan-European interoperable solution in relation to many of these issues. So there's many factors apart from the system that you're very familiar with as a Commission official of decision making and making member states do as they're told.
We have time for max 2-3 more questions, and then we'll get into some interactive part. One here, and if you have one, just let me know.
Hi. Yeah, again, I think this is a very, very important point, data protection, privacy, and I personally do think, and I'm working in the field of big data, in the field of big educational data about students, what they're doing in schools, and there is currently a climate in the European Union, also in the European-funded project, where you have to be very, very careful what you do with data and how to treat them, and you're required to invest a lot of efforts in exactly such kind of things, in assuring that no harm can arise to any person, and that you're treating the data perfectly and completely safe and this and that. And at the same time, we're required to compete with US or China or somewhere else who give, you know what, about data protection or something else. They just do it. And I think what we need to find in Europe, because of course data protection, privacy, it's important. It's a privilege to us, the citizens. But we need to find, I think, a better balance between an extra burden and a human right. So I think we're a little bit on the wrong way in Europe in this particular area, and it's really hard to do something, just to do it.
So just to put it in English, you say we're focusing too much on privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're using it as an excuse to just not make progress.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Any other final comments or questions?
Can I have, because there was a question of what's and how's. Just on the digital skills. So I'm an engineer too, but from the NMT times when that was the time a lot before the 4G. So I'm not especially technician on the mood, but looking at my children, who's now 6, before he learned to speak or properly, or before he learned to write, he learned to load the easy apps. So how much are we using easy applications on our interaction with the citizens as the e-governance. So yes, digital things, or the comment that we should remember that 40% cannot use the internet page. I have difficulties to find some information from the government side. I always find the law. I don't want to have the law. I have to have the application, how to use the law. So the simple apps that you can push the button and then you see what to do, they should be more used on the services to the clients too. So that's one very concrete idea that yes, and then after it's quite easy to put on the automatic translation to talk about the multilingualism. So if you are freshly thinking, it's very easy and needs no skills to use digital services, but then it needs more skills to be able to provide these services and understand the back office.
You need just as long as you have the mic, just one final comment. The last point on privacy. I mean, from a political perspective, do you think we're overusing privacy as an excuse to just not make progress in different fields?
Overuse, yes, but then how to have it that the trust, if there's no trust, there's no users, if there's no users, there's no more services. But then I know concrete examples. My friend of mine, a professor who happens to have horses, and then summer camps for the children. Cannot use the European mobile phones because of the strict data protection rules, because in the Asian ones you have one push button that recall the call, whereas somebody's father is calling that my child is allergic to milk or peanuts when she's coming to 3 days on your horse riding course. So then she just records that one, but the European legislation requires you to something special to do, able to recall the calls. So yes, there must be a lot of examples that hinders the possibilities to use innovations here. But if there's no trust for the privacy or no trust, so that's the balance they are negotiating now this week also on data protection and on these issues. Where's the limit that you have some? And my answer is the very Estonian one. I think the openness is the one that you should see a lot more. How the data is used, how my data is used, how is it collected, and have those trances that my mobile has been, the information has been gathered from this and this sensor. That should be the way to go forward. But I think we have to come to that debate in the European level.
Okay, thank you. Now to wrap up this discussion and to have a little bit of playtime with the gadgets. All of these ideas have been captured now, and we'll get to this list. Well, we have this list here now. We'll go through them. Jean-François and Marcus back there have been trying to capture them, so we have a number of principles, a number of rights of the comments made, and just to get your input on what are the most important ones in terms of prioritizing, so the Commission can take this back and to see how do we translate this into a charter or into incorporate it into the action plan in the future. So to just not make this a paper exercise, but really involve it. We have here digital/e-service by default, and we had the discussion by default or by right and such. Cross-border by default, inclusive services for all accessible, multilingual, once only, privacy confidentiality, open, user-friendly, intuitive, transparent, collaborative citizens involvement, fast, efficient, access to machine-readable format, quality of information, right to make business anywhere in the EU, right to control access by citizens, security, exist digitally, access to cheap, fast network, access to data, one-stop shop, receive/submit e-documents, digital literacy, automated services. From the context of accessibility, I've been reading all of them out to make sure that everyone has them. Some of these are very tangible. Some of these might be a bit more abstract and fluffy and such. Before going to that, let's just practice how to prioritize them. So I think now we have just a draft. Take your gadget and turn it on. At the very bottom right, there's the on-off button. And just to make sure that everyone knows how it works, just use one device. So don't double devices because there's 3 extra ones. Is this your first time in Riga? Just to test it, 1 yes, 2 no, 3 I don't recall for whatever reasons of such. And Riga, what's that? So if you could just place your vote on all of these 4, any of these 4. And if you choose higher than 4, you can submit it, but it gets lost, so it's just a waste of the number. And then you press the number, and then you see send at the top right. And after everyone's done that, we should... It's going to get a bit like the Eurovision in the next, you know. So then we have the points from Germany, and then the points from Sweden and Denmark, and then, you know, you get the neighboring voting for the neighbors and that kind of stuff. And so, and as it's being collected, we'll get the results there. And for the next overview of the list, you can do it at whatever speed you like. But you see this whole big list of topics. It's prioritizing. You're not going to be bound by it by member state. That on Thursday and Friday you will say, "But you voted for that, so thou shalt commit to it." It's flexible. So you know, Mechtel's sitting back there so that people know if she's not going to keep it to you. And you just choose 3. So press a number 3 times, and then you can vote for the same thing 3 times if it's top priority, but it's nice to get some diversity for the topic so the Commission can include that. Jean-François, do we have the votes? Alors? Soon, okay. Yeah. Digital by default here, but that means the process is to be followed. And in the meantime, you just start thinking about the topics that you want. You would like to make a comment?
Yeah, on the topics. I propose 3, and there are only 1 in the list.
Okay, we'll get to that one in a sec. So first of all, the voting here. Yes, no, I don't recall Riga. So this is for the first one. At least we see it working now. What we'll do now is for the list of topics, get that on the screen. So your devices will probably be reset now, so you can vote again. And then we'll get these. One comment here. You said you had. Yeah.
Apart from digital literacy, I proposed citizens' involvement in the design of e-government services, and also e-democracy and e-participation. Okay.
Citizen involvement's there.
And e-democracy and e-participation. Okay, it's being added now. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Final comments. We're closing the list. No additions now. Just to double check. Now you can just choose your top 3. And I'll see if it... Yeah. So now you see at the bottom 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3. So just enter a number 3 times, whichever ones are most important for you. And if it's too far away, there's also screens back there for the back row. And you just turn around. And when you've done that, you'll get some message, Jauta Yuma Varisnaf, something like that, which basically, what does that mean actually? No more questions. Okay, has everyone voted so far? Anyone still pressing buttons here? Jean-François, we need the screen back. You're going too fast. We need the list. Yeah. First, we need to have an inter-service consultation about whether the list can be gotten back. Jean-François, could we have the original list back? Yeah. Be fast now. You never know when it's gone again. This is adaptive e-government. You know, we have something and then we change it a little bit afterwards to fit the answer that we want. Of course, yeah. It's reverse engineering. First you get the vote and then you change the positioning. Yeah. Okay, anyone still voting? No? Okay, so back there we can close it off now and you can start counting it. And while they're counting, just some final reflections from here. Petra, what was the number one that you chose?
I thought it was some privacy.
Well, you're a politician.
Okay, I'm open. I took the privacy in one among those three, even it was complicated here, because then that's the come when it's also the e-government and then a fundamental right to some certain of privacy, which can be then blurred in unanonymous data. So that's technically possible that after doing that. So that was among those, and then inclusiveness. What was the word for that? And then I was. I don't even remember the third one. The privacy is still there.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. You give a politician a choice of one, she gets you three. So, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, of course I waited for once only. But the thing we didn't have there is, and I couldn't comment it before, is that the best government service is that the service actually doesn't exist. I mean, there's no service. I mean, like, you solve the problem in a way that there is no service needed, and those are the best services. I'm like, for example, if a child is born, the parent shouldn't apply for child support money automatically. That's obvious, like example. But for example, what we are working at the moment is that, for example, businesses, especially micro businesses. If their business doesn't involve any cash, they shouldn't do any reporting towards the government.
Okay. Ben, your preference?
I went for cross-border by default. I think from a business perspective, I think it's very important that the administrative services are available not only to the companies in that member state, but if we really do aspire to an internal market, they have to be equally accessible to businesses from the other 27 member states. So that's why I went for that one. The only once was tempting, but I would have preferred the not even once principle, which I thought was great, and I think I fully support the point that Tavi just made, that if you can avoid a requirement, then all the better.
Martin.
Fast, cheap internet, and I would even go further and say there might be a model for free. If you have your contact in one country, it should be the same condition automatically that you have access to the internet in the European Union.
Barbara.
There was one that was like automatic by default, I think, and that's the reason why I chose is because some of the comments were very interesting, and I think having that right enables, first of all, to focus on the automatic by default and not on the digital by default, which means that I agree with you, Frank, there should be the right to choose, not the right necessarily to do things online. And that also addresses the point on inclusiveness, because as long as the services delivered are of the same quality for which you mean the automation in the back, it doesn't matter what channel you use to access the services.
Well, you don't need to ask the question, right?
Multilingual.
I'll tell you number 2 and 3.
No, we have the votings already. Just number one. And what was your number one?
My number one was the connectivity and internet accessibility. I think that's like rephrasing some, like, I think Estonian ministers like a long time ago, you probably know the name of him. I think that fast broadband free internet across all European territories matter human rights.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have here the votes as well for from all of you. So top one, once only, with 19%. User-friendly, intuitive, 15%. Digital literacy, digital e-service by default, one-stop shop, right to control access by citizens, inclusive service for all accessible, cross-border by default, access to cheap, fast network, and security. So at least the top ones, literacy, user-friendly and intuitive, and with digital by default as the top 4 as well. So that is the opinion of the crowd here. I'm not going to reflect on that. I mean, this is open, and I mean, feel free someone to take a picture of it now and make sure it's tweeted. And in the follow-up, the Commission will take this up and see how they can incorporate it into whether it's a charter or whether it's include these findings in the next e-government action plan and such. That wraps it up for this morning. First of all, I want to thank everyone in the panel for their contribution to the discussions. I also want to thank everyone in the audience for a lively debate, because it's been quite engaged, and I think everyone's been very active, giving opinions and different perspectives. So much appreciated from everyone. Right now, we'll have lunch downstairs, and in the afternoon, a plenary session again. Thank you very much, and enjoy the lunch.